Okay, now on Newsfighters, joining me is the co-author of the new book On Politics and Stuff with Evan Williams. It's Mark Humphries, who is the ABC 730's in-house satirist. Now, for all our friends listening overseas, Mark, can you describe this role? It's a bit like if Dana Carvey joined the NBC Nightly News or Steve Coogan had a segment on BBC's Newsnight, right? Like, how did this come about?
That's a good question, really. I mean, does it exist in other programs? I'm not even sure.
It's a very Australian thing.
Yeah, right. So it's sort of yes, it is somewhat of an Australian tradition. So there used to be a pair of satirists named John Clark and Brian Dorr who would do a short satirical segment at the end of the week, a sort of mock interview, and that they did that for many years. And but anyway, about I think maybe 10 years or so, they went off and sort of left 7:30 and had their own little program. And so for several years, 7:30 has not had satire, and for some reason a couple of years ago they went, let's do that again. And so that my writing partner Evan Williams and I were lucky enough to get the call up, and because we have a background in doing satirical sketches, we've been working together since about 2012, and and so we got that gig, and so once a fortnight, because that's how much the ABC budget can afford, we do a little sketch, I suppose, sort of whatever kind of takes us that particular week. But yes, that's sort of the background of that.
And you started in 2018, late 2018. Surely you haven't been short of material. I started Newsfighters in early 2019, and I honestly thought I'd just be making Prime Minister Bill Shorten franking credits jokes around now. We haven't been short of material, have we?
No, that's it. That's the thing. I say this all the time, and I try and couch it, phrase it very carefully. I am very much in favour of a change of government, not out of some ideological, lefty, whatever. I just am bored of making jokes about this particular side of politics. Just give us something new. I just can't. This was the thing about the same-sex marriage debate in Australia that went on for so long, and it was thank God it finished for A, people who wanted to get married, but B, from a selfish perspective, so that I didn't have to keep sending it up. I just got how many more, sketches can I do saying this is ridiculous? Just let them get married. And so, same thing with climate change. That's the one I really just am so, I simultaneously think it's the most important thing that we should be talking about, and I also go, I don't know what else I can say about this topic. So, anyway, that said, there have been, I guess, on the plus side, from a satirical perspective, this government over the last few years has provided a fair few characters, I think you'd say, Dylan. I think we've been quite fortunate in that sense, and some of them have moved on to other things. But then there are the sort of the perennial favourites like Barnaby Joyce, who's the leader of the Nationals Party, sort of a kind of a country party in Australia, and who has now returned to the leadership of that party after you'd think you'd think he was out after he impregnated his staff, just blew up his marriage. He threatened to kill Johnny Depp's dogs. There's all sorts of things. If you're not from Australia, go look into Barnaby Joyce. There's a whole rabbit hole to go down.
Now, if Labor does gain power, are you hoping for the same comedy material from future Deputy PM Richard Marles? Now, surely he can. Surely you've got a Richard Marles character in the pipeline.
I've got a few clips in the back in a folder where Richard Marles used to host a show on Sky News with Christopher Pine. Pine and Marles,
yes.
Yeah, and this extraordinary thing where you had two members of Parliament from opposite sides of the aisle hosting a show, and I just think that's extraordinary. Firstly, how do they have time? Secondly, they shouldn't have time. How dare they? And then, and also just who's the audience for this? I don't know what that. I mean, you could say that about a lot of Sky News programs, but So Richard Marles seems pretty dull on the surface, but these, I think leadership and the responsibility kind of bring something out of these people, not necessarily, for the better. So I'd be keen to see what that looks like.
So now onto your book. Now I was looking online, and according to the internet, this is your second book after Data Warehousing Architecture and Implementation from 1999. Yeah. Is that correct, or did I misread that?
Let's go with that. Let's go. I've cared a lot about data implementation. Don't ask me anything about it right now.
Is it a different Mark Humphries? I think it might be a different Mark Humphries. I'm not sure. It's hard. You don't have a Wikipedia page, I actually discovered as well, which makes it a bit hard to fact check these things.
Yes. Yeah. Now, there is another Mark Humphries who's got a new book out, which came out last month, called The Spike. And so I've been getting, we've worked out that he gets some of my feedback, I get some of his feedback. So we now sort of know each other and message each other when we've got something to tell the other. But
there you go. This could be your Sky News shows, Humphries and Humphries.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I love it. But this is my second book, though. Evan and I wrote a book called The Chasers Australia about 5 years. I mean, no, when I say second book, I mean no one's read it. But for the Chaser Australian satirical group, we wrote a book a few years ago, and since no one read that, we thought we'd have another one. Try again.
So how did this come about? It's they have a series called On, and this is on politics and stuff. Did they just they approached you? They thought this was your wheelhouse, obviously.
Totally. Well, because so Hachette Publishing, they have this On series, and they get this slim volumes is the polite way to describe this very, very small book. It's just they're slim volumes on different topics, and so they've had people like Blanche Del Puget and Sarah Hanson-Young, and so people in politics and people in public life, Lee Sales, and so logically the next name you think of is Mark Humphries and Evan Williams, and so they came to us and said, is there something that you, in this series, that you think you could contribute? Do you want to do something on satire or what have you? And that felt a little bit kind of navel-gazy or something. And so we just said, well, can we just do one on Australian politics? And they said yes. On Australian politics sounds a bit up itself. Can you kind of just give it a little something? It's like, on politics and stuff. Yep, great. Okay. So the stuff is more politics, just to be clear. It's not really about anything.
Yes, I picked that up. I was going to say, what is the stuff in On Politics and Stuff? Because it's all politics. Yeah. And what was the aim with the book? I felt like I read it, I enjoyed it. I felt like it was a kind of almost an explainer for people who don't know all the Australian in-jokes about our pollies and political parties. Was that the aim, or what were you trying to do here?
It's a little bit of a journey, I suppose. It's a journey through political life and how one might go about that and what you would need to know. So I think, yes, it is. Maybe it's Australian politics for dummies. Maybe that's what it is on some level. But I think there's certainly stuff I hope that appeals to the people that the well-informed ones like ourselves who follow this stuff closely. But we sort of start with kind of how you get to Canberra, quite literally, as we detail the
Murray's
coach, the Murray's coaches. We should have actually come to some commercial arrangement with them, because we give them quite a plug.
You do. I've caught that coach a lot. It's not worth writing about at all, really.
Oh, it's not? Okay. We originally wrote it as Sid Fogg's, because we like the name Sid Fogg's more than Murray's. But Sid Fogg's apparently don't
go to Canberra. No, I think they're a coastal bus. Yeah.
And of course, we believe in creating a tome that upholds the highest editorial standards and fact checking. So we reluctantly adjusted it to Murray's.
And then writing with Evan, your co-writer, who you've worked with for a long time. What's the writing process like with him, especially on this book? Do you divvy it up into chapters, or do you finish each other's sentences, or what is it like?
It's great. We've got a very good, a really wonderful relationship where we basically will be in a shared Google Doc together. And at least for this one, it starts obviously as a series of conversations about what are some of the areas that we might want to cover. So we sort of brainstorm. We want to talk about the two different houses, the upper house and the lower house. We want to talk about some of the ministerial portfolios. We want to talk about Canberra, the city, all those sorts of things. And then from there, it's sort of a kind of free-for-all where we both put on our respective, Spotify soundtracks. So I'm hitting the ABBA pretty hard, and we're kind of writing independently, but we're seeing each other write as we go. And what's nice about that is sometimes I'll see Evan is writing a particular area and that'll spark me, and so I'll sort of jump on the back of what he's doing or vice versa. Otherwise, we might be just in separate sections, and then after a couple of hours we'll just say, okay, do you want to have a chat? And then we'll just read through what we've done, and then that will always just spark more jokes, and so it's quite an enjoyable experience, really. And we rarely have disagreements. If one person doesn't like a joke, that's pretty much a cue for us to go, well, let's ditch it. So there's nothing in there that, I think everything in there has been approved by both of us, I would say. Though if there are any things you don't like, you can address all inquiries to Evan.
Yes, absolutely. And it's a very slim read. I managed to knock it over in an afternoon. Is there anything you wish you had more time to expand on, or anything that could become a second volume, perhaps?
That's a very good question. I mean, I think, generally we could have done more on sort of the actual policy side of things. I think we didn't. So I think, I guess sort of governing in general as a general idea. I think maybe more to do with the media. We sort of touch on all of these things, but there's certainly room for expansion, but not to the point where we wanted to go and write 40,000 words. So it was just sort of like, we know we can write more than this, but we don't think we can write that much. So or rather, we're just too lazy. We only make a 2-minute sketch once a fortnight. It's really not in our nature to overexert ourselves.
Nice. And what's coming up in the future? More book writing, and I guess more 7:30 sketches, I suppose.
More 7:30 sketches. What have I got coming up? Yes, that's right. At the end of the year, we'll be touring Australia. So each year I tour with Charles Firth from The Chaser, Jenna Owen and Victoria Zerps from The Feed, and James Schleffel, who is the founder of The Shovel, so all satirists, and we do a live show. And so, pandemic permitting, we'll be coming to all the major cities and some smaller towns at the end of this year. So yeah, looking forward to that, because I really like just that instant response of the crowd, and so that'll be nice to get to be among people again. Yes, assuming that such a thing.
We'll see what happens. TBC.
Call me again in 6 months. Then play that clip back to me. How did that work out for you, Mark?
Brilliant. All right, the book is On Politics and Stuff by Mark Humphries and Evan Williams, available where all good books are sold, or if you're trying to be COVID safe, available as an ebook, which is if you don't want to leave your house. Thanks again, Mark. Where can people find you online on the socials?
At Mark Humphries on Twitter. My Instagram needs a bit of a boost, so at Humphries Mark.
Yes.
I couldn't get the rights to my own name. So
that's Spike Book. That's Spike Book guy.
Exactly. Gosh, god damn it. Hit me up over at Humphries Mark on Instagram.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for making time to be on News
Thanks,
Fighters.
Dylan. Cheers, mate.
News Fighters, Australia's funniest news summary podcast.